The burgundy folder slid across the polished mahogany, coming to a gentle stop just inches from my water glass. I recognized the embossed logo of Sterling and Company immediately. My sister, Chloe, was smiling across the table, a perfectly composed expression that usually meant trouble. "What's this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light, but a familiar tightening in my chest told me I already knew. Chloe dabbed at the corner of her mouth with her napkin, her diamond bracelet flashing under the chandelier. "Just a little something that might help, Sarah. We're hiring for several positions. I thought of you right away." Beside me, my 9-year-old son, Ethan, had frozen, a forkful of mashed potatoes suspended halfway to his mouth. Across from us, our mom, Sarah, shifted uncomfortably, and my dad, Robert, cleared his throat. Only Chloe's husband, Blake, seemed amused, a slight smirk playing on his lips as he refilled his wine glass. I opened the folder. Inside was an application for a janitorial position. Part-time evening shift, $14 an hour. "You want me to apply to be a janitor at your firm?" The words felt flat even to my own ears, coated in a sudden, icy disbelief. Chloe's smile never wavered. "It's honest work, and since you're clearly struggling to provide for Ethan, I figured something stable would help. The benefits are actually quite good for that level." Ethan's face flushed crimson. He looked down, suddenly fascinated by the precise arrangement of green beans on his plate. "Chloe, maybe this isn't the time," Mom began, but my sister waved her off. "When is the time, Mother? She shows up to family dinners in the same 3 outfits. Ethan is wearing shoes from last year that are clearly too small." "I'm trying to help. My shoes are fine," Ethan mumbled, his ears burning red. Blake chuckled. "Come on. It's not charity. She'd have to actually work for it. Show up on time. Follow instructions. Think you can manage that?" The condescension was thick enough to taste. I took a slow, deep breath, folding the application back into its folder. Chloe and I had always been competitive, but this felt like a new low. A line I hadn't known existed. "That's very thoughtful," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "But I'll have to pass." "Pride." Chloe shook her head, exchanging a knowing glance with Blake. "This is exactly your problem. You're too proud to accept help when you clearly need it. Do you know what Ethan told me last week? That he can't join the robotics club because the fees are too high. A child shouldn't have to miss out because his mother is too stubborn." Ethan was completely still beside me. I could almost physically feel the shame radiating off him. "Actually," I said, sliding the folder back across the table, "I'll pass this along to my assistant. She handles all our building staffing needs." Chloe blinked. "Your assistant?" "For the property management company I own. You know, the one that owns the building where Sterling and Company rents their offices." I took a slow sip of water, watching her expression shift from confusion to dawning disbelief. Small world, isn't it? The color drained from Chloe's face. Blake's smirk vanished entirely. "Chloe, stop," Dad said quietly, but the damage was already spiraling. "That's impossible," Chloe insisted. "The building is owned by some corporation. Cascade Holdings or something." "Cascade Property Holdings," I corrected. "I established it 13 years ago, right after my divorce from Mark. Started with one small commercial building downtown, then expanded. Your offices are in my 4th acquisition. The lease comes up for renewal in about 8 months, actually." Mom's eyes were wide, and Dad was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. "You're lying." Chloe's voice had a shrill edge. "You drive a 10-year-old sedan. You live in that tiny rental house. You're trying to embarrass me in front of everyone. I pulled out my phone, navigating to my email. Would you like to see the correspondence between your office manager and my property team? There was some issue with the HVAC system last month. Or I could show you the wire transfer from your firm's rent payment. It hit my account on the 1st, same as always. Ethan was looking at me now, his expression a mix of confusion and hopeful awe. Blake had gone very quiet. He worked in commercial real estate himself, which meant he probably understood the numbers better than Chloe did. The building that housed Sterling and Company sat in a premium downtown corridor. The monthly rent for their floor alone would have been staggering. Why wouldn't you tell us? Mom's voice was soft, laced with hurt. Because it was easier this way. I set my phone down. No expectations, no questions about money, no assumptions about what I could or should do with it. You let us think you were struggling. Chloe's shock was rapidly morphing into anger. You let me worry about you, talked to my partners about finding you a position, and all along you've been, what? Playing poor. I never said I was struggling. You assumed that because I don't broadcast my finances or live extravagantly. There's a difference. The shoes. Blake interjected. Your kid's wearing shoes that don't fit. Ethan lifted his head. My shoes fit fine. Mom asked if I wanted new ones last month. I said no because I like these. The robotics club? Chloe pressed. I told you the fees seemed expensive, Ethan said, his voice gaining strength. Not that we couldn't afford it. I wasn't sure I wanted to join anyway. I watched my sister process this, seeing her mental narrative unravel in real time. Every assumption she'd made, every pitying look, every condescending comment about budgeting and making smarter choices. How much? Dad asked, his voice low. Dad, that's not really, I sighed. The property holdings are valued at about $42 million. That includes the 8 buildings I own directly, plus the property management company itself and its contracts. Give or take. Mom actually gasped. Chloe looked like she might be sick. And you didn't think to mention this? Chloe's hands were shaking. Do you have any idea how I've looked? Talking about you at work, telling people my sister was going through a rough patch. I got you that job application because I told my managing partner about your situation. He approved the direct hire as a favor to me. A favor I never asked for because you were too busy lying to everyone. I never lied. My voice came out sharper than intended. I simply didn't correct your assumptions. You wanted to believe I was failing, so you did. It made you feel better about yourself. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the clink of silverware from the kitchen had stopped. Chloe stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is unbelievable. Blake, we're leaving. Chloe, sit down, Dad said, but she was already grabbing her purse. No. I'm not going to sit here and be humiliated. She's been making a fool of me for years. You did that yourself, I said quietly. Every time you bought Ethan clearance rack clothes for his birthday while bragging about Blake's bonus. Every time you suggested I shop at discount stores or clip coupons. Every time you made sure everyone knew how much better you were doing than me because I thought you needed help. No, you wanted to be the successful one. You needed me to be struggling so you could feel superior. The words came out before I could stop them, years of swallowed resentment finally breaking free. When we were kids, you couldn't stand that I got better grades. When I got into Georgetown and you didn't, you told everyone I only got in because of affirmative action. When I married Mark, you spent the whole wedding telling people he was settling. That's not fair. You spent my entire life trying to compete with me. And the only way you could win was by changing the scorecard. So when I got divorced and downsized, you saw an opportunity. Finally, something you could be better at. Finally, proof that you'd made the right choices. Mom had tears in her eyes. Dad was staring at his plate. Blake looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. I thought we were close, Chloe whispered. We were, before you decided my life was a project you needed to fix. Ethan tugged at my sleeve. Mom, can we go? Looking at my son's uncomfortable face, I realized how unfair this was to him. He didn't need to witness his mother and aunt tearing into each other. Didn't need to carry the weight of our dysfunction. Yeah, sweetheart. We can go. Wait. Dad's voice cut through the tension. Everyone just wait. We all turned to him. He'd been quiet through most of dinner, as he usually was during family gatherings, but something in his tone demanded attention. Chloe, sit down. My sister hesitated, then slowly sank back into her chair. Dad looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something shift in his expression. 42 million? The company's valuation. Yes. How did you do it? The question caught me off guard. Not accusatory, just genuinely curious. After the divorce, I took my half of the settlement, plus my inheritance from Grandma Helen, and bought a small commercial building that was about to go into foreclosure on Willow Creek Lane. The location was good. The previous owner had just been bad at management. I fixed it up, filled the vacancies, and used the income to secure a loan for a second property. Then a third. The market was right. I made smart choices, and I worked hard. Really hard. While raising Ethan alone, Mom added softly. While raising Ethan. Yes. Chloe was staring at the table. I didn't know you bought buildings. I thought you worked in data entry. I do property management for my own company. Tenant relations, maintenance coordination, financial oversight, all of it. I handle most of the administrative work myself to keep overhead low. I softened my tone slightly. Chloe, I never wanted to make you feel bad. I just wanted to live my life without constant commentary. So, you let me hand you a janitor application in front of your son. The accusation hung there, valid and cutting. You're right. I admit it. I could have told you privately, but honestly, after years of you treating me like a charity case, watching you try to humiliate me in front of Ethan felt like the last straw. I'm sorry he had to see this, but I'm not sorry for defending myself. Blake cleared his throat. For what it's worth, this is the most interesting family dinner we've had in years. It surprised a short laugh out of me. Even Chloe's lips twitched. Your lease really comes up in 8 months, she asked. October 15th. Are you going to renew it? I considered the question. That depends on whether your firm continues to be a good tenant. The property manager says you've never been late on rent. You report maintenance issues promptly, and you haven't violated any terms of the agreement, so probably. You're not going to jack up the rent to punish me. Why would I? That would be bad business. I paused. Though if you're worried about it, you could always apply for that janitorial position. I hear the benefits are quite good. For a moment, nobody breathed. Then Ethan let out a surprised giggle. Chloe's eyes widened, and then, incredibly, she started laughing too. Real laughter, not the brittle, social kind. I deserve that, she said, wiping at her eyes. I absolutely deserve that. Mom looked between us uncertainly. So, we're okay? I don't know, I said honestly, but maybe we can work toward okay. Chloe nodded slowly. I owe you an apology. And Ethan, I'm sorry, sweetheart. That was cruel of me. Ethan shrugged, trying to look nonchalant, but I could see the relief in his face. It's fine. It's not fine, but thank you for saying so. Chloe took a shaky breath. I think I've been jealous of you our whole lives. You've always been smarter, more capable. When you got divorced, I thought, finally, we'd be on equal footing. That's awful, isn't it? Pretty awful, I agreed, but honest. Can I ask you something? She met my eyes. Why did you downsize after the divorce? If you were building this empire, why live in a rental house? Because Ethan needed stability more than he needed a mansion. The house is in a good school district. It's close to his friends, and it's manageable. I didn't want him to grow up thinking money was the measure of everything. The business is important, but it's not who I am. I didn't want it to define us. Unlike me, you mean? Chloe's voice was quiet. I've been defining myself by my job title and Blake's salary for years. Blake shifted uncomfortably. To be fair, you worked hard for that position. I did, but I also used it as a weapon against my own sister. She looked at me again. I don't know how to fix this. Maybe start by treating me like a person instead of a problem to solve. I can try. It wasn't a resolution. Not really. Years of resentment and competition wouldn't evaporate over one dinner, but it was something. Dad cleared his throat. Since we're apparently sharing secrets, your mother and I have been thinking about downsizing ourselves. The house is too big now that you girls are gone. Dad, you love the house, Chloe protested. We do, but we love other things more, like traveling. Your mother wants to see Italy. Mom blushed. I mentioned it once. You've mentioned it approximately 600 times in the last year, Dad said dryly. We could sell, buy something smaller, and use the difference to actually live a little. I smiled at that. My parents had always been practical to a fault, saving for a future that never quite arrived. You should do it, I said. Life's too short. Chloe nodded agreement. You really should. And Mom, if you need help planning the trip, I know a travel agent. Of course you do, I said, but this time there was no venom in it. The moment stretched out, and then Mom spoke up, her voice tentative. I still don't understand why you kept it secret. Not just from Chloe, but from all of us. I set down my fork, gathering my thoughts. It started as privacy. After Mark and I split, everyone had opinions about what I should do, where I should live, how I should raise Ethan. The property investment was mine, something I built without anyone's input or judgment. We wouldn't have judged you, Dad said. Wouldn't you? Dad, you told me 3 times that I was making a mistake leaving my corporate job. You said entrepreneurship was risky, especially for a single mother. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. I was worried about stability. I know, and I appreciated the concern, but I needed to prove to myself that I could do this. If I told you from the start, every decision would have come with a chorus of advice. And warnings. I needed space to succeed or fail on my own terms. Blake had been listening carefully. The first building you bought, the foreclosure. That was the Willow Creek Lane property, wasn't it? I glanced at him, surprised. How did you know? I remember hearing about it years ago when I was just getting into commercial real estate. Someone swooped in last minute with a cash offer that was well above asking. The seller accepted immediately. He shook his head with something like admiration. That building's worth quadruple what was paid back then. About that? Yes. I refinanced it a few years ago. Chloe was staring at her husband. You knew about this? Not that it was her. I just knew someone smart had grabbed a gem. He looked at me with new respect. You saw what I saw. Location, good bones. Terrible management. Fix the management problem, and everything else falls into place. Exactly. The previous owner had let maintenance slide, didn't screen tenants properly, and had no system for collecting rent on time. I instituted basic procedures, and occupancy jumped from 60% to 95% within 8 months. Ethan had been quiet, but now he spoke up. Is that why we used to drive by that building sometimes? You'd always slow down and look at it. Guilty. I like seeing my investments in person. It keeps things real. Mom was twisting her napkin. When you bought the second building, we thought you were struggling so much that you'd taken a second job doing night shifts somewhere. You looked so tired all the time, because I was working around the clock, managing properties during the day, handling administrative work, and tenant issues at night after Ethan went to bed. It was exhausting, but it was also building towards something bigger. You should have let us help, Mom insisted. With what? Babysitting? You already watched Ethan twice a week. Money? I didn't need it. What I needed was time, and nobody could give me that except myself. Chloe had gone very quiet again. I offered to help with Ethan multiple times. You always said no because your help came with strings. You'd watch him, and then spend the whole next week telling me everything I was doing wrong. What he should eat. How much screen time was too much. Why his bedtime should be earlier. It was easier to handle things myself. I was trying to be supportive. You were trying to be superior. There's a difference. The truth of it sat heavily between us. Chloe opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. When did I become this person? When did I turn into someone who needs to tear down her own sister to feel good about herself? Dad's expression softened. You've always been competitive, Chloe. Even as a little girl, you needed to win every game, ace every test. It wasn't enough to do well. You had to do better than everyone else. Especially better than me, I added quietly. She didn't deny it. I remember when we were in high school. You got chosen for the lead in the school play without even auditioning. They just asked you. I'd been in theater club for 3 years and never got more than ensemble roles. Because you were a terrible actress, I said, but gently. You hated being on stage. You only joined because I did. I hated that everything came easily to you. Grades, friends, opportunities. I had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. That's not true. It felt true. And when you married Mark, this brilliant lawyer from a good family, and I was still dating Blake, who was just starting out in real estate, I felt like I was losing again. Blake raised an eyebrow. Just starting out? I was 26. You know what I mean. Everyone kept comparing us. Mom's friends would ask about her daughter, the lawyer's wife, and I was the one dating the guy who sold condos. I sell commercial real estate, Blake corrected mildly. Now you do. Back then you were showing apartments to college students. I studied my sister's face, seeing the insecurity I had somehow missed for years. You know Mark and I were miserable, right? The marriage was falling apart before Ethan was even born. We were just good at hiding it. Mom looked stricken. You never said anything. Because I was ashamed. I'd made this big choice, had this perfect wedding, and it was all wrong. Mark wanted a wife who'd host dinner parties and join the country club. I wanted to do something that mattered. We were fundamentally incompatible, and by the time Ethan was born, we were barely speaking. But you stayed for years, Chloe said, for Ethan. And because admitting failure felt impossible. Everyone thought we were the perfect couple, I laughed bitterly. You have no idea how many times I envied you and Blake. You actually liked each other. Chloe and Blake exchanged glances. We have our issues, she said. Sure, but you're partners. Mark saw me as an accessory. When I told him I wanted to buy the Willow Creek Lane building with my inheritance and part of what would be my divorce settlement, He said I was being ridiculous. Called it a fantasy. I told him it wasn't a fantasy, and I didn't need his permission. We had a prenup that kept our finances separate, and Grandma Helen's money was mine alone. That conversation was basically the beginning of the end. We divorced 6 months later. Dad sat back in his chair. I wondered what you did with that money. Your grandmother left you $250,000, and the divorce settlement was substantial, which became 4 buildings, which became 8, which became the portfolio I have now. Grandma Helen would have approved. She was always telling me to bet on myself. She also told you to divorce Mark years before you did, Mom said. She had good instincts. I should have listened sooner. Chloe was processing all of this, her earlier anger transforming into something more complicated. When you got divorced, I threw you a party. Do you remember the liberation celebration? Yes. I thought I was being supportive. But really, I was celebrating that you finally failed at something. That's horrible. It was pretty horrible, I agreed, but I understood it. Even then, you needed me to be imperfect. I still need that, apparently. Otherwise, I wouldn't have handed you that application tonight. Blake cleared his throat. For the record, I told you it was a bad idea. You did not. I said, and I quote, "Maybe we should just send her a text about the opening." You're the one who insisted on printing it out and presenting it at dinner. Chloe's cheeks flushed. I wanted everyone to see me helping. I wanted Mom and Dad to witness me being the generous sister. You wanted to humiliate me, I said flatly. Maybe I did. She met my eyes. I'm sorry. Truly. The apology hung in the air, and I found myself believing it. Chloe had many faults, but she'd never been a liar. What happens now? Mom asked. With the two of you? I don't know, I admitted. This isn't something that gets fixed in one conversation, but it's a start. There was hope in my mother's voice. Chloe looked at me. Is it? I thought about the years of small cuts, the constant comparisons, the exhausting competition. I also thought about childhood summers when we'd been inseparable, building forts in the backyard and inventing elaborate games. That sister was still in there somewhere, buried under layers of insecurity and resentment. It could be, I said. Finally, if we're both willing to be honest. Actually honest, not performatively honest. What does that mean? It means you stop trying to save me, and I stop letting you think I need saving. It means we have real conversations instead of status updates. It means you deal with why you need me to be less successful than you are. Chloe flinched, but didn't look away. That's fair. What do you need to do? The question surprised me. I need to stop punishing you for being who you are. And I need to admit that some of my secrecy was about control. If you didn't know about my success, you couldn't comment on it, but you also couldn't share in it. That wasn't fair either. Ethan was watching us with the intensity of a kid who knows something important is happening, but doesn't quite understand what. Dad cleared his throat again. Your mother, and I should probably take some responsibility here. We set you two against each other from the start. How do you figure that? Chloe asked. Every achievement was a comparison. Chloe got an A, but your sister got an A+. Your sister made the team. Maybe you'll make it next year. We thought we were encouraging you both. Instead, we made everything a competition. Mom was crying now, quiet tears sliding down her cheeks. We were so proud of both of you. We just didn't know how to show it without comparing. It's okay, Mom, I started, but she shook her head. It's not okay. We created this dynamic and then acted surprised when you two couldn't just be sisters. When was the last time you called each other just to talk? Not about family events or obligations, just to connect. The silence was damning. I couldn't remember. Years, probably. We're going to do better, Dad said firmly. Your mother and I are going to Italy, and we're going to stop mediating between you two. You're grown women. You don't need us to referee. We've been using you as buffers, Chloe realized. Every conversation goes through Mom. Every conflict gets smoothed over before it can actually get resolved. Guilty. I admit it. We finished dinner in a strange new quiet. The tension replaced by something fragile and uncertain. Ethan asked for seconds on dessert, which Mom practically threw at him, clearly desperate for something normal to do. As we were leaving, Chloe caught my arm. Can we have coffee sometime? Just us. I hesitated, and she saw it. Look, I know I don't deserve it, but I want to try. Really try, not just go through the motions. What would that look like? I asked. She glanced back at the house where our parents were watching through the window. Probably therapy, honestly. Maybe together, maybe separately. I don't know. But I'm tired of being this person who needs to tear others down, especially you. Therapy is expensive, I said automatically, then caught myself. Sorry, that was a reasonable observation. It is expensive, but Blake's insurance covers it. And honestly, our marriage could probably use it too. She gave a self-deprecating laugh. Turns out being constantly insecure and competitive doesn't make you a great partner. Blake had come out to join us, car keys in hand. She's not wrong. I've been suggesting counseling for 2 years. You have? Chloe looked at him in surprise. Every time you spiral about not being good enough or someone else doing better, which is approximately weekly. His tone was gentle despite the words. I love you, Jen, but you're exhausting sometimes. Instead of getting defensive, Chloe just nodded. I know. I'm exhausting to myself, too. Ethan was already in our car, playing on his phone, giving us space. I watched him for a moment, then turned back to my sister. Here's the thing, Chloe. I don't need you to be perfect. I don't need you to have all the answers or be the successful one or whatever narrative you've built. I just need you to be real with me. Even when real is messy and jealous and petty, especially then, because I'm messy too. I'm controlling and secretive and I hold grudges. We're both works in progress. Chloe wiped at her eyes, smudging her mascara. Coffee next week. I'll text you. Okay. But Chloe, if we do this, we do it honestly. No more performances. No more performances, she agreed. Blake guided her toward their car, and I heard him say something that made her laugh. A real laugh that reminded me of when we were kids. Maybe there was hope after all. In the car, Ethan waited until we were a few blocks away before speaking. That was intense. That's one word for it. Aunt Chloe seemed really upset. She was. She is. I navigated through a yellow light. How are you feeling about all of it? He shrugged, the universal 9-year-old response to emotional complexity. I don't know. It was weird hearing you talk about all that money stuff. Are we really rich? The company has assets, yes, but we live the way we live because it's what works for us. But we could live differently if we wanted. I heard the real question underneath. Are you unhappy with how we live? No, I like our house. I like my school. He trailed off, struggling for words. Sometimes kids at school talk about expensive stuff their parents buy them. I always figured we couldn't afford it, and now you know we can, but we don't. How does that feel? Confusing? Like, why wouldn't we get nice things if we can? I pulled into a parking lot, putting the car in park so I could look at him properly. Do you remember when your friend Noah got that expensive gaming setup for his birthday? The one with the curved monitors and custom PC. That one. Do you remember what happened 3 months later? Ethan thought about it. He barely uses it. He said he got bored. Exactly. Having things doesn't make you happy. Doing things, learning things, experiencing things, that's what matters. The money from the business means we have security and options. It means you can go to any college you want without worrying about debt. It means if you want to start a business someday, you can. It means we're safe. But not that we buy everything we want. Right. Because wanting things is infinite. There's always something newer, better, more expensive. If we start measuring our lives by what we own, we'll never be satisfied. He processed this, then asked, "Is that why Aunt Chloe is always unhappy? Because she measures like that?" The perceptiveness caught me off guard. Partly. Yes. She's comparing herself to everyone else constantly. It's exhausting. Do you compare yourself to people sometimes? I'm not perfect, but I try to compete with myself instead. Be better than I was last year. Make smarter decisions than I made last month. That kind of thing. That makes sense. He was quiet for a moment. Can I tell my friends about the buildings? Is that important to you? Kind of. Like, it's cool. My mom owns buildings. That's pretty awesome. I smiled at his enthusiasm. You can tell them. Just remember that what you do matters more than what I've done. You're not impressive because I'm successful. You're impressive because you're kind and smart and curious. Can I be impressive and have a cool mom who owns buildings? I suppose that's fair. We drove home, and Ethan chattered about his robotics club plans, the immediate drama already fading into something less urgent. Kids were resilient that way. But as we pulled into our driveway, he asked one more question. Mom, are you going to change how we live now? Since everyone knows, what do you think we should do? I think we're fine how we are, but maybe we could get a dog. I laughed. You've been campaigning for a dog since you were 6. This has nothing to do with tonight. Worth a shot. He grinned at me, and I saw Mark in his smile, but also myself and something entirely his own. Tell you what, you keep your grades up. Show me you can handle the responsibility of robotics club, and we'll talk about it. Really? Really? But we're talking a rescue dog, not some expensive designer breed. Deal. He bounded out of the car and into the house, already Googling local animal shelters on his phone. The evening's tension completely forgotten. I sat in the car for a moment longer, processing everything that had happened. My phone buzzed. It was Chloe. I meant what I said about therapy and trying. I'm going to call someone tomorrow. I typed back, good. Proud of you. Her response came quickly. Don't be proud yet. I haven't actually done anything. You admitted you need help. That's something. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before her next message came through. I've been thinking about what you said, about needing me to fail. You're right. I've been rooting against you our whole lives, and I don't even know why. Therapy will help you figure it out. I hope so. Blake's been patient, but I can tell he's tired of it. I'm tired of it, too. Another message. Thank you for not evicting my company out of spite. I know you could have. Bad business decision, I replied. Plus, your office manager is excellent. She always submits maintenance requests properly formatted. I'll let Patricia know you approve. She'll be thrilled or confused. Probably both. I smiled at my phone. Coffee next week. You pick the place. There's a new cafe near my office. They do these lavender lattes that are ridiculously overpriced. Perfect. Your treat, since you're so successful and generous. I walked into that one. You really did. Inside, Ethan was already making a list of dog names, completely absorbed in this new possibility. I watched him for a moment, grateful that he could bounce back so easily from adult drama. Mom, do you like the name Rocket, or should we go with something classic like Buddy? What's a secret you've kept that changed everything when it finally came out?